So
I'll
while
mention
you
that when
so
I'm
while
ready.
you start briefing, what I will do, I will definitely on Teams hit him up just to make sure that
Yeah,
Kevin
it's Chen.
Chen.
Chen Tao. Thao. Chin Thao. And he already knows. He's trying to dial in. But he will be dialing in
All right.
at like soon.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. It happens to be that our clocks have a 12:30 on the dial. Some of the clocks actually are about to hit 12:31. So, in effort to keep things moving, I will request that you start finding your way to your seats uh, and start getting your notepads and ready so we can allow our NMSC team take the floor after lunch. So, no tall order, not enough of tall order, but as people keep making their way in, we continue to do a quick reminders of the level of classification that we're going to be talking in. We keep it on class. We keep asking for an upgrade. It keeps getting denied. So, in Spectrum fashion, our request for higher classification has been denied. On the Teams world, can I please get a mic check? Make sure that A, you can hear us, and B, you can speak up.
We have you, Lillian Matari.
Thank you very much for the confirmation. So at the very least, we are going out stations and we're receiving. So it looks like we got a low crowd, but nonetheless, people are making their way in. So we're gonna keep pressing on. So without further ado, our NMSC team, our Fast Rep Spectrum certification is gonna be a two-part presentation. So he's going to kick it off, and then he's going to do a virtual handoff. So we're all excited to see how that's going to work out. Since we already got all our troubles with microphones earlier today, this one is going to be nice and smooth sailing. So, all right, boss.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Dahl. I'm part of the Navy Marine Corps Spectrum Center up in Maryland. All right, so just like we said before, this is gonna be a two-part presentation. I'm gonna start off the fast portion, and then I'm gonna transfer it over to Chen Thao, who's gonna dial in and speak on that behalf. So please, if you could, please hold all your questions till the end, where we both can answer those as we can go. Next slide, please. Hey, so quick introduction to myself before we go over the whole agenda. I am a retired United States Marine, right? I did 22 years. I just retired back in April of 23. I spent a lot of my time underneath the one MEF umbrella providing spectrum for 1st MLG, 3rd MAL, 1 MARDIV, even the MEF umbrella, and then I moved over to MOTS 1 where the schoolhouse is and VMX 1 for testing and evaluation, right? So very in-depth knowledge of the MEF, and a lot of y'all already know y'all. And you know me from the times we worked together. So just say it's just a quick introduction to myself. And now I support you in a different matter at the national level. So if you ever need me, you still have my cell phone number. So by all means, just give me a call. So for today, right, we're pretty much gonna cover the foundation of spectrum of assignments, right? And then I'm gonna go over the assignment process of USMP, barely touch a little bit on international, and then I'm gonna close out with timelines, some of the issues and concerns that I see. Next slide, please. All right, hey, so for the foundation portion, right, so requirements drive. The requirements to me is our foundation, right? So just like I stated yesterday, the requirements that come down, that is the foundation that drives, and it allows our equipment certification team to do their portion, to certify those equipments that fill those requirements so that spectrum managers can do their proposals and assignments to match those requirements as possible. Please take in mind that requirements are constantly growing. We're not a huge fill, but they're constantly growing, so we're going to do the best that we can at NMSC to help you reach those goals on filling those requirements. Next slide, please. All right, so I know growing up, I didn't really know as a young spectrum manager what is the actual process of an assignment, right? Whether it's going temp, it's going proposal. All I know is it went up to NTIA and it got tabled. Right, and I'm sitting there, it's like, all right, who tabled my assignment? What's going on? Like, I don't see anything. Like, what's the gender viewer? Like, what is this? You know? So I was like, I'm gonna go over that a little bit just to educate some of the people. I know some of y'all already know those answers, but there's a lot of people actually who don't really know that, right? So when you actually submit your proposal, right, you're going to submit it to your local, it's going to go up your chop chain, as we used to call it back in the day, right? So you have, your MEF, well then, all your records will go up to your MEF level, right? Or whoever your equivalent is of that, and then it goes up to our NMSCSOs, right? We got Lori, I don't know if Lori's still in the room, or Jim Hunt, or like Northwest, Southwest, right? They're all good people. Your records go to them, and then from there, they're going to start that lateral cord with the people that need to lat cord with, right? Either that's with FAA through WebFCR, or that's with SBE coordination. That could be seed requirements. That can be the AFCs that are in those areas that you need those proposals in, right? So once they finish all those coordination port processes, they're either going to release that FERS record, or they're going to push that record up to NTIA, right? Now, any record that Now, there's a few records that do go from your local managers up to the NMSC level for higher coordination. So if I need to do a state department coordination of that level, we can handle that at top, right? Anything national, it'll come up to us. Now, once your record makes it up to NTIA, right, at that portion, that record is going to be placed on an agenda. Right, and so NTIA processes about 200 agenda records, new agenda items every day, every work day. So if your record didn't make the cut, it'll make the next cut, right? Once it hits that agenda, we hope to God that it stays in process for the 9 working days it needs to go through the process, right? But if not, it gets tabled. And then that's where, me as one of the FAST reps supporting for the agency, right? We have the FAST board. So once that record hits the agenda, all 20 members of the FAST board right here, if you see right here, they're all different agencies. They're going to be reviewing those records, right? And because their main job, first of all, is to protect their own records, and then they're going to look for compliance or any interference that your record may cause, right? Which is the reason why it could get tabled. NTIA is going to look at it for compliance, making sure that you're following the allocation tables correctly, All right, in some cases, we're going to have actual issues that your record just can't get untabled. It's going to be an issue that we have to bring up to the board. But, if all board members have to get together, because they do a monthly FAST meeting where we talk about agenda items of what we can do to fix certain things, what's causing issues, how can we fix it, do we need to change the red book, or do we need to change the allocation process, all those we handle, it goes once a month. So during that time, hopefully we can get it passed. If not, then we have to look at what else that we can do to get your assignment or fill that requirement in a different approach. Next slide, please. Now, the same for OCONUS, right? So I'm not really, I'm not going to touch too much on this because my main focus is USMP. That's what I'm hired for, is USMP processing only. But the process is, it's pretty straightforward. It goes from the customer to your Navy, Marine Corps Spectrum offices out there, Far East, and a couple others. And then it goes to the COCOM up to the host nation, right? The biggest thing with this is I want you all to understand is NTIA really has no touch point in this, right? This is all in accordance with ITU regulations. Those frequencies that you're asking for, they're all owned by those sovereign nations, right? So we got to do those host coordination. The only issues that I see is the biggest one is timelines, right? How long does it take for you to get that, through the whole process of getting an assignment, or releasability? Can we release our documents to those host station coordination, right? That's a huge thing. And then also allocations. You might not get back what you actually wanted. So for a good example, a long time ago, I think it was Okinawa. We wanted to use A and W2, and we ended up getting, I think, 4 for the whole island to start off. Not what we asked for, but we made it work. But it's one of those portions. Next slide, please. All right, so timelines, issues, concerns. Like I said before, NTIA, they process. So when your assignment gets on an agenda, right, it stays there for no less than 9 working days, unless you need an expedited vote. Don't call up every record an expedited vote. It's not a thing, because NTIA is going to come back and say, hey, let it go through the process. allow the other agencies to make sure that you're not going to interfere with something, right? So on those 9 working days, that's when it gets reviewed by every agency, and then we all vote. Let's see here, the changes on the agenda, right? So if your record gets tabled or there needs to be a change made to your record, we'll make that change, but keep in mind that change won't reflect until about 2 or 3 days. And if that change actually requires it to be moved to another agenda for a vote, then your 9 days start all over again. 9 working days, pick back up, and keeps going. But if it's not a change that affects the agendas, then it should go accept, and we should be good. A biggest issue I'm having right now is people not paying attention to details and accuracy that goes inside their proposals, which is one of the biggest things that impacts your process and time. So like SPS is huge, it's always updating. So if you're not going off of the most current SPS, that's going to stop you when your record gets up there to get looked at. For FAA coordination, right, for WebFCR, I know everyone has different opinions on this, but after talking to a lot of FAA representatives, they don't look at your record on WebFCR at a minimum until a 30-day mark, if I'm not mistaken. That's around about when they start looking at your records for coordination. That's a minimum timeline. Your record could sit there forever if you don't interject with those counterparts up there asking, like, hey, are you missing something? What can we do to fill in those gaps? Foot stomp on the red book, right? I know the biggest thing is as well is who's using a printed copy JF12, who's using a printed copy red book these days, right? Like, please don't, all right? Stay current because changes happen. It's online, all right? Take a look at it. The latest I want to say is 2023 because when I call up somebody to ask them about what their table is on their record, and I say, hey, I'm looking at this page, this paragraph, whatever, and they're looking at the same thing, and it's different, right? So please go off the new red book. Let's see, what's the next step here? SPS versus JF12s, right? So what I'm saying is like nobody outside the DoD really focuses on JF12s. If you leave the SPS off your record will get tabled, or they're going to want to know why you're not using an experimental station class for that record, or is it going to be saying it's something that they want. So everyone outside looks at SPS documents. So please make sure that you're following that because there's an understanding difference between an operational station class and an experimental station class. So let's focus on that one. And then understanding the additional coordination between non-federal bands or FCC or SBB or SBE. Things to note though for the crowd, I'm assuming everyone in the room heard that RJ Russell from SBE is retiring and there is no replacement. So that's just gonna drag that portion out unless somebody knows who's replacing RJ up there. It's a money issue, right? All right, so that's something that we got our eyes on in the future for SBE coordination. So we're just gonna figure out who we're gonna switch that coordination over with. But we'll make sure that we get that ironed out before he steps off deck. And let's see, last not least is stays, right? Special temporary authorizations. So if a company comes out and they want to test a piece of gear, they'll submit a stay through FCC. And that goes up to the FAS, right? It'll go through, from SEC over to NTIA and then down to us to make sure that whatever they want to test, right, doesn't interfere with any Navy Marine Corps records for my section, right? So I'm here to protect y'all. But at the same time, I don't want to say no to those stays, right? Just like they don't want to say no to you. That's why they'll put the left and right lateral limits on those, because those stays could be advancement to the United States, right? That could be some piece of gear down the road that we may want to start utilizing. So allow them to, let's try my best to coordinate with everybody and across the board and to get those stays approved. But it's all about coordination, right? If I have to turn mine off for a day so you can turn yours on to do a 2-hour test, let us know. But a stay for DOD, right? So when we submit stays, I know I had a lot of questions about how our stay process works. Is you'll contact your local NMSCO, let them know you want to do a stay at your local at whatever portion. Once they fill it out, they'll send it up to NMSC. We'll release it up to NTIA. Then it goes into the process. Once it goes out of NTIA, the state usually processes about 5 workdays. And then from there, it comes back with your coordination, if you need to do coordination, or approval after that portion. And then you only get the 30 days to use that stay through the DOD. That's my understanding. That's DOD policy. Not the NTIA policy. Other than that, do I have any questions? Oh, hold off on those questions. Next slide. Tao, are you on? Jen?
Hi, Matt, I'm on.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Matt, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Chien Tao. I'm sitting in for Mr. Ikram Israel. He's on emergency leave. So I will be talking about spectrum equipment, spectrum certification. Next slide, please. So the agenda today will be equipment certification process, the expedite process, host nation coordination process for COP Part 15, and the update status on SIPR BPM. Next slide, please. So the equipment certification process initiated by this non-SysCom program office. So the program office gather the technical data. If the SSD collection involves collaboration with vendor, the program office works directly with the vendor and provide the data via BPM, Business Processing Management Tool, to NMSC for review and generate the SPS package for the national level coordination at the NTIA SPS. So NMSC is the small spectrum management office for the Department of Navy for all spectrum needs. So depending on the type of equipment that program office submit to us, the ESC process may require both SPS and ESG certification. If the equipment is, for example, SCC certified Part 15, then it would just process through ESG working group, which is the DoD level coordination and not SPS. However, if it requires SPS certification, then it would need to go to NTA, and the equipment have to be certified by NTA before we can process at the ESG level. So as you can see on the slide there, so and then host nation coordination that can process in parallel with ESG and SPS certification. In the past, we required that it was, it has to process through ESG first because we need to have proper documentation before we assign JF12. However, due to circumstances where sometimes host nation need to happen quickly, so we would be able to process that in parallel as we process the SPS and ESG certification, which takes some time before we can get them certified. So in this case, we would provide a JF12 number as a placeholder for host nation coordination department to work on the host nation. So because host nation is a separate process which does not require all the technical data that NTA requires, so so that way we can actually process in parallel. Next slide, please. So in terms of the expedite ESC process, in order to do that, sometimes program office has urgent requirement which require us to process in an expedite manner. So in this case, NMSC will be able to support that on a case-by-case basis, provide that the program office has sufficient technical data that meet NTA standard, which means it will pass LSAT compliance check. That way, we don't have to go back and forth, so we can actually process it in an expedited manner. NMSC does, however, need at least 2 weeks prior to NTA cutoff in order to review and generate the package and process accordingly. And NTA will need additional 3 weeks to review and generate SPS number. And of course, the certification will require longer than 3 weeks. So once we receive data for the expedite request from program office, NMSC will review the data and validate for compliance. Then we will generate the SPS package and submit to NTA as an expedite request. So this process should reduce the certification processing time frame from around 12 to 24 months, depending on the complexity of the equipment, to about 1.5 to 8 months to fully get the equipment certified. Please be advised, not every SPS request can be expedited because every time we request an expedite, NTA has to reprioritize all the Navy submission previously submitted to them. So meaning that means that some of them have to be delayed. So we have to look at case by case. So that's for the expedite request. Next slide, please. So for host nation coordination for COD equipment, Part 15. Essentially, the program office for COD equipment, they would have to contact the COD's manufacturer to release the data, the technical data. And so if the COD is already registered or licensed to use at the host nation, then host nation coordination is not required, right? So, for example, a satellite system where, say, it registered in Japan already, so they are aware of the system, so there's no need to do the host nation coordination. However, for most equipment that's not registered at the host nation, the coordination has to happen in order to be successful. So in 2003, just an example, PMS 406 requested host nation support for the USV SM project and was unsuccessful due to short suspend to do proper host nation coordination. So even though the COD equipment, but we still have to go through the process, the host nation process. So, and if determined that the host nation is required, the program office must provide the DD 1494 that is coordinated with the foreign disclosure and approved. And so program office should provide the DD 1494 along with the approval letter from the foreign disclosure office in order for our team to process it properly. So that's basically a short overview of host nation coordination. But next slide. So that's basically what I just stated. So next slide. So so lately, we have been having significant outage and issue. So program office were not able to submit the request through SIP or BPM. But we're working on beta testing a workaround using IntelDoc. We'll provide instruction on how to temporarily work around the BPM issue. So I think that's the last slide. So pending any question you have on host nation coordination or ESC process.
How you doing, sir? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
How you doing? My name's Kevin Porter. I'm the EMS officer over at 1MEF. I wanna ask you a question here really quick in regards to the host nation coordination process. So, in line with the comment on the Marine Corps' recent planning guidance, where he has basically tasked us with starting to explore more experimental systems and start moving away a little bit more from just GOTS-based equipment. The issue we have with this is that we are severely being outpaced by procurement from our different agencies and organizations, with all these different vendors from industry getting them equipment very rapidly. I am the only electromagnetic spectrum officer, not just in the entire state of California, but on the entire Western Hemisphere, and the next closest one to me is in Hawaii. So I'm the only one in California that deals with these certifications, and I cannot keep up by myself with the certification process, specifically in regards to Part 15 COTS equipment. So what I'm trying to figure out is, what can we, as the Marine Corps, do to assist the Naval Marine Corps Spectrum Center with expediting this process? Because I feel at this point that I'm walking into my boss's office every day saying, we cannot take this equipment to the Philippines, we cannot take this equipment to Australia, et cetera, because it doesn't have a 1494, okay? And obviously, that's unacceptable for my boss, it's unacceptable for me. So we're getting stuck making these tough decisions where do we just want to attempt to use this equipment anyway, ask for forgiveness later instead of asking for permission now. So I feel like there's a disconnect somewhere between Marine Corps Systems Command and the Navy Marine Corps Spectrum Center or any other organization involved with this process. And what we're trying to do now is level set to where we can find an expeditious process specifically in regards to COTS equipment, so we can take this equipment overseas, because what we're doing is we can buy this equipment and within 3 weeks we can be in theater. That's how fast our turnaround is. We do not have time to develop a 1494 from Part 15 equipment when the vendor is not working with us and getting us that technical information, so we're stuck guessing, trying to fill in these blanks. And if anyone's ever looked at a blank 1494, you know how tedious and eye-soaring that is. So if you can just answer that for me, what can we do to help you help us get much faster turnaround results for specifically, again, COTS equipment?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. That's a great question. I think that's the situation that we are in when it comes to an expedite process. Unfortunately, so unless the equipment is already registered at the host nation, most likely host nation will not permit us to radiate when we try to radiate at in their backyard. So this is why getting the data and vetted through the Foreign Disclosure Office to make sure that we don't provide any secret information or proprietary information. So I see the challenge, because we had recently PMS 406 also request our support, and what we try to do is through a it's called the diplomatic coordination, which we go through our embassy and so forth, but I haven't heard any success in trying that approach. That would be the, if that approach works. We have done for Navy ship and so forth, but not for experimental, like the USV and so forth. But we have tried that approach, and I have not heard any success yet. So that's to be seen. But that's one way. The correct way, as I mentioned, is collaborating with the vendor. Unfortunately, because the short suspend, it's very difficult, and that's where it's kind of unfortunate that we cannot have any other way, I would say. But the best way is that we have to have the technical data that vetted through the Foreign Disclosure Office, and then as one of my slides said, we need at least 180 days in order to do all the coordination. Some country may require longer, but that's an average. So short suspend is, unfortunately, that's going to be a tough one. I hope I answer your question.
Oh, Tran, thank you. Yeah, that was a really good attempt to explain a very complex problem. Some of us have nightmares, or we call it PTSD, from wearing those shoes, because it's a very complex situation that I think as a Spectrum community, any little bit of help goes a long way. But team, I'm up here because we got to keep the show moving. If we have any additional questions, please type it up on the chat or scan the QR code, submit your after action so we can follow through. Thank you. They're making their way through, so those of you that are submitting it, I appreciate it. Now I'm going to go ahead and we're about to transition to a panel. So I'm going to ask Mr. Ben, Chief Officer for Reese, James Gibson, Mr. Mike Brown, and hopefully I'm getting it right, Senior Chief Petty Officer Jesse, please come up to the front, and Mr. Tom Sneed, so we can have our panel. We will do our best we'll do our best to keep ourselves on time, on task, but we recognize that this is an event of interest, so.
Good afternoon also. Today we have a Spectrum Operations panel. I just want to say thank you, first of all, for joining this panel and being panelists. You're definitely an esteemed group of colleagues here. First, I'd like to ask if you guys could introduce yourselves and identify what is your stake in the Spectrum space. Actually, could you, Alan Rosner, start?
Sure. Alan Rosner with NTIA's Office of Spectrum Management. I wear lots of hats, but most importantly, I lead the IT modernization of the software systems that they have in OSM. I have been overseeing some of the certification work for the last 6 months as well. So that's kind of the areas that I touch inside of OSM. Ben?
Okay, there you go. Okay, hi, hello everybody. My name is Ben Tedeschi. I worked in the NTIA Office of Spectrum Management. I oversee spectrum certification and frequency assignment. I started 26 years ago as a staff engineer in the system review branch and transitioned into the leadership position of overseeing the entire spectrum certification and assignment process. So we have several engineers in the certification, and we have telecom specialists in the assignment area. And certification is equipment that's submitted from agencies that require checks with standards, technical and policy areas, and then the ultimate goal is to get a frequency assignment certification, just one piece of it, but the authority to radiate is in the frequency assignment.
Hi, I'm Mike Brown. I'm retired out of NMSC here I currently work at the Frequency Assignment Branch. I'm an action officer for under Ben and Greg Mells, Frequency is the FAB chief. Retired out of the Navy, out of NMSC headquarters in 2012, working for Elvira at the time. And thank you, ma'am. And transitioned to NTIA back in about 6 years ago, 7 years ago now. So.
He has a much more colorful background if you look in the AFCEA app.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the back pay too.
Tom Sneed, I am the Chief of Spectrum Ops for, as of Monday, we were half A3 Charlie Sierra, so we just moved over to the A3. I'm a 30-year airman. I've been back with AFSMO for about 2 years, so we handle all the assignments and all the certification work for Air Force Spectrum.
Hello, good afternoon. I think I'm the baby spectrum manager in this group. So from PO Spectrum, Senior Chief Elmore. We used to be the Joint Spectrum Center, so we're now this PO Spectrum. So what we do, when we used to be JSC, we used to go to schoolhouses, train them on joint tools, train them on joint tactics and whatnot. But we don't do that anymore. But we still do the exercise as well and supporting command's operations when they request for us. I've also been part of the 7th Fleet Spectrum Managers, doing the host nation coordination for the MQ4 as Admiral Thomas stated before. So yeah, that's me.
Good afternoon. Mentioned earlier this week, Chief Warrant Officer for Richard Reese. I am the lead Spectrum Planning Officer for the Marine Corps. I'm stationed at headquarters Marine Corps back at the Pentagon. Been in the Marine Corps for about 24 years. Started doing Spectrum back in 2009. Yeah, that's my story. Thanks.
Sorry. James Gibson again from NMSC, N3 Division Manager, which the assignments that Matt Dahl just briefed fall under my division, and we work closely with the N2 Division that Chen Tao just briefed.
Thank you to all the panelists. Christina and I are going to pinch at the questions here. We'll start with the first question. How can we improve spectrum efficiency?
The way to improve spectrum efficiency is right now we are going into sharing, as sharing also contributes to standard compliance. If your emissions are high or your harmonics levels are not controlled or your out-of-band emissions contribute to adjacent channel interference or co-channel interference. So the way we improve spectrum efficiency is by making sure our equipment comply to NTIA standards and also having automated tool to check for interference analysis.
I think from the assignment side, the biggest challenge we meet, or our biggest mission, is to get the assignments right and give an accurate EME. So I'd have to say that in order to prove efficiency, you have to have an accurate EME to balance, and for any automation tool to be able to check for your interference and make sure you're not going to intermod or interfere with anybody else.
So I think as the Air Force, really Department of Defense as a whole, I think we are pretty efficient with our use of spectrum. I mean, it's kind of built into our DNA. If you look through 4650, it talks about efficiency in like 4 or 5 different places. Much the same with the EMS-3, the electromagnetic spectrum superiority strategy. I think it talks about efficient, let's see, 7 or 8 times in that document. So I think it's something we do. It's something we understand. A lot of times when we're out on our operation, we're not given everything we need, so we have to figure out how to make a lot of things work. And I think as a big DoD priority, until a big emphasis is put on funding for being more spectrum efficient, I think it's just something that we're going to struggle with. It's kind of a coalition of the willing, if you will, to make us more efficient. And really, deterrence is expensive. When I joined 1987, F-15s were $20 million a piece, and that was our air superiority fighter. Now F-22s are $350 million a piece. So you can see and we have like, what, 200 of them. So do the math. That's a lot. It's very, very expensive to be a deterrent force. And anybody who was on the Lincoln on Monday, I mean, that ship cost $2.4 billion to build. If you go and try and replace that with a Ford-class carrier now, it's almost $15 billion. So it's very expensive to be deterrent, and I think being efficient in the spectrum, at least for the DoD as a whole, just hasn't broken squelch yet, as importance-wise against all these other things that are competing.
So I think looking from a joint level perspective and based on observation from the past 2 days, I think there's a sense of urgency that we need to transform the culture, not just in the Navy, but also at the joint level. If we talked about the JP385 or the EMS superior strategy, it's asking for us to actually combine with EW, Intel, N2, and 36, right? To understand the concept of these entities as well. Because back in 7th Fleet, when I was part of the IWC construct, there's some things that N2 and N3 would say that I wouldn't know exactly, such as LNOT, right? And when joining the joint world, right, we got a sense of like what exactly is LNOT and how can we use that to become efficient. So for example, if you do have a JSER, right, if you have a JSER and they're asking for analysis for that, what you could do as a spectrum manager, you can make it efficient by knowing exactly the type of jammers it is, and jammers usually is listed as an LNOT. And again, there's a tool that we could use for that, which is like, such as EMBMJ or the MIST, right? We could use those tools to actually look at that JSER, provide LNOTs, and provide analysis to that JTF or the GEMSOC. And again, that makes us an efficient spectrum manager.
Right, so looking at it from a couple different lenses, from the headquarters Marine Corps standpoint, we've been discussing it all week, right? Dynamic spectrum sharing, right? We definitely need to look at advanced spectrum sharing technologies, right? We need to look at regulatory. We need to reform our regulatory, right? Restraints. There's some restraints there for us, right? From a military standpoint, right? We had the discussion in the previous brief earlier, and then I spoke about it earlier, and what we're looking at in the Marine Corps, and I think this covers a lot of what you discussed, Senior, is modernizing the workforce. Right. Right. I think that's a big thing. We have to modernize the workforce, training. We have to look at spectrum a different way, right? We joke about it in the Marine Corps, but the days of managing spectrum from a spreadsheet are no more.
Going to go last. Most of everything was covered, but definitely the tools. We need better tools because for those that are out there, spectrum managers, current or former, Spectrum 21 is antiquated, and we had no luck with getting the Spectrum 21 online. So, but we need more efficient tools that will help us. I mean, we do feel that we are efficient with the spectrum, but at the same time, with better tools, we can prove that to industry as well. As it relates to the spectrum sharing and dynamic spectrum access and all those things that have been covered earlier today. And then just a foot stomp, again, even though Rich already kind of mentioned it, working through the critical demands with relation to the regulatory constraints is a big deal that we need to figure out the best way to be more efficient.
Thank you.
Great, thanks all. You can be first this time then. So I have another question. So the Department of the Navy has a unique role of global operations. Recently, we've seen our carriers in theater utilizing technology not in accordance with the national standards. We've also seen critical Marine Corps UAVs in theater, all which require test and training for expertise prior to deployment. How does domestic spectrum regulatory requirements affect the ability to innovate? And how can this process be improved to accommodate emerging requirements and the rapid acquisitions process?
So I think kind of going back to the last comment from before this panel started, the big thing is, obviously we know there's tons of vendors out there that want to support DoD, But the thing is, we need to engage with them early on to get the technical requirements, so we can even, from the beginning, we can let them know, hey, there's going to be a lot of constraints with this to support the warfighter, and we're not going to be able to train as we fight. So I think that's one of the big things, engagement with the vendors that are there to support us, so we can get the best capabilities out there with the least amount of constraints.
Thank you. Take a look at my answers. Mentioned Marine Corps UAS systems. Prior to coming to the Pentagon, I did a stint at 3MEF, and I think Vice Admiral Thomas mentioned it earlier this week, right? Train as we fight, right? Some of the regulations, if we cannot train prior to leaving here, we cannot fight. We can't, fight on our deployments, right? And it's over, like James said, right? We have to get with the vendors, right? The units, they have to do a good job of getting those requests in a timely manner, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I would say, going back to 3MEF, I think, and some of the questions later on, I think this applies to it as well. I think we put ourselves in a pigeonhole, right? Some of the constraints that we have here in the States to operate and to get things certified and get it approved, I sat in Japan and I've watched emails come from other countries and them state that the certification process that we use is old and antiquated, right? It is too much data from the DD-1494s and everything like that, right? So I think we need to go back and the COCOMs need to have those conversations with those countries, right, to see, hey, what is required? What do you guys need for us to certify this equipment, and so on and so forth? We have to get after this because at the end of the day, a unit prepping for a UDP to head over to the Pacific or to Europe or so on and so forth, they need to train on this equipment. A ship getting ready to deploy out, they need to do their certs before they deploy out. And if they cannot do that before they leave the States, then they might as well not go.
Again, as mentioned, I had a team over here also that's now Mark Taylor, Chief Taylor back then. We were part of the MQ4 process for the host nation coordination from crawl phase to run phase, right? The process could have been better. It could have been streamlined better. But because, again, we had to wait for the 1494s from the program office, and we had to go back and forth, it just takes a long time. And along with the combatant command's timeline, you're also now worrying about the host nation coordination timeline with the host nation. So, again, if there's a U1 or G1 right at the beginning, that has to be, you have to involve the program office and the vendors ahead of time, so that way we can actually, cause or not delay the process when it gets to the host nation process.
Yeah. Just to piggyback somewhat from an Air Force perspective, I know it's kind of a Navy-centric question, but we're dealing with the exact same thing in the Department of the Air Force, really, and we're trying to get after getting this kind of information baked into the acquisition cycles so that the vendors are providing this information to us before we buy the systems, and then we have to try to play catch-up. So that's kind of the big thing we're pushing now, especially when it comes to Link 16, that is evolving so fast that the EMCF process or certification process in general, they just can't keep up. So we're trying to put that onus on the vendor to provide all that information and get through that process so that when we finally buy the system, it's much, much easier for us to implement. So.
Yeah, I think this goes back to, like everybody else has said, the policy needs to be reflected. However, one of the challenges we continually face is getting the certification data, getting an assignment while the certification is still in process. And I know that's a challenge for everybody, just get the assignment up, right? But by the time that it hits NTIA, we're looking at an assignment. So what we've done is we've allowed, while it's in coordination at SPS, to allow a one-year timeline temp assignment, just so you can go out and do what you got to do within the USMP. So, and things like that, it's all we can do. But it prevents people from getting the stays. I know we've walked away from that for years. Elvira's shaking her head, because that was such a painful thing, and so that's one of the things that we've been able to try to do to help expedite the process a little bit.
All right, thank you.
I just echo what Tom said. During the acquisition process, the vendor knows what the NTIA standards are, just make them comply. I mean, our manual is open to the public. All the standard, the radar equation, the harmonic levels, the spurious, and all that stuff is open to the public. So all the vendor has to do is just comply to the standards, so we don't have to ask for a waiver from out-of-band emission or any unwanted signal, because it really impacts other receivers around where this system is operating. So non-compliance slows us down in terms of certification process and assignment.
Well, thank you. Next question is kind of near and dear to my heart. It's asking essentially, what type of modernization do we need, in the Spectrum community? I've heard a couple of comments so far in this regard. Just from the NTIA perspective, I wish I got to do my brief here as part of the IT modernization work, but we are looking at both tools and capabilities as well as business processes as we look at modernizing capabilities inside of NTIA. But many of the panelists would like to address that. Again, the question is just what type of modernization do we need?
I think you're spot on. You just answered it. And I mentioned earlier, I would add, James added IT modernization, right? Our systems and so on and so forth, the tools that we use, and just the workforce, right? We need to, from a military standpoint, we need to modernize our training. We need to modernize the Spectrum workforce.
Just to add on to Warren was saying about train as we fight. Again, being part of the joint, we're involved in a lot of exercises from Tier 1 command exercises. And a lot of times we're embedded with the Red EW Pucksters down at Suffolk at the Joint Warfighting Center. And oftentimes, like the modern sims, right, it doesn't show exactly the multi-domain aspects, right? If we're going to fight an EMS, it shouldn't be white-carded all the time, like in a lot of these CPX exercises. So.
And I think just to add to the IT tools, if there's any way to look at streamlining the processes, whether it's combining steps, removing steps, because a lot of the processes that we still use have been in place for several years. So I think we need to look collectively at the process itself to see if there's any ways to streamline just that point.
Yeah, I really wish I could have done my brief, have a little demo of some AI work in there, about 10 minutes to go through the process of asking ChatGPT to give me a frequency assignment. We really think AI is going to have a significant role in the future of our modernization. You all have a say in that. We have a working group with all the agencies. There is a Navy representative to that working group. There's ample opportunity to provide feedback as we modernize our internal system. All right.
Thank you. So the next question is kind of a follow-on from yesterday. What has been the greatest challenge for your organization's Spectrum operations?
So one of them, and you'll get a brief on it after this panel, Link 16, but just related to that and some of the other things we've already mentioned as well, is just the regulatory agility, finding ways to keep up with the pace of requirements. Like, for example, Link 16, we had to do Space Link 16 testing with another foreign partner because of the regulatory constraints here in the USMP. So just finding ways to be more agile.
I think my war nurses mentioned it earlier, just technology outpacing us, right? We're at a point where within some outfits within the Marine Corps, it's like we're not even using DOTS equipment anymore. It's COTS. That's the first thing that the commands will run into, right? And so now we have the issue with the certification piece of the COTS equipment, right? So some of the things we need to work more closely with industry, right, to get that information, to get it certified. But then there's a question to NTIA, right? If it's a COTS equipment and it's FCC certified, right, can we use some of that information from it being certified on the FCC side and have reciprocity on the government side? But again, 3MEF, their march fight tonight, right? So it's moving and it's moving fast, right? And the commanders, they want the new whiz-bang equipment and they want to get out there and they want to use it. So that's some of the biggest challenges for us right now.
So for us, I think it's since becoming PEO spectrum, now we've stopped, again with the training aspect as well. So currently we're still training the CENTCOM deployers when they go out to CENTCOM, but eventually that resource, that that training is going to go away. So we're in contact with CENTCOM to actually help them out, get them assist as far as getting the deployers training, because that requirement for them is not going to go away. So again, this is I think one of the biggest challenges we have right now.
So I think just in general, just access to the EMS. We need to be able to access all parts of bands, and maybe in a range, solidified to a range environment. But we need to be able to transmit like our adversaries transmit. So we need to be able to replicate those threats, because when we send people downrange in those funny looking onesies like my boss there, we want to make sure that they are ready to face the threats that they are going to face. We want to eliminate as much risk from what they have to do day to day by allowing them to train as they are going to fight on our ranges. And that is becoming harder and harder to us as the spectrum, at least our maneuver space within it, gets confined and constrained more and more through policy. So.
The risk of sounding like a broken record, I think the biggest challenge that we face is just getting it right on the assignment, getting the correct certification data, so that we can get an assignment that will accurately reflect the EME, so that everybody can go out there and operate where they think they're operating without interference to themselves or others.
The main thing is eliminating or minimizing harmful interference. So one of the challenges we face is equipment comes in at stage 4, operational stage, and it doesn't comply to standard. And I have to take that certification to my boss, and what's justification is for non-compliant. And it's too late at stage 4. So if you bring in at stage 1 or 2 experimental, let the system transition to a different phase from conceptual to operational or developmental, so we can give you guidance. In that way, when it comes in at stage 4, we have complete compliance in the NTI manual. So our job is to make sure that your system don't get compromised or other systems don't get compromised. Therefore, that's our biggest challenge, is seeking waivers from standards.
Ben, can you just touch on the chief's question about COTS equipment? Because I've seen, I've been signing certs for the last 6 months, seen a number of COTS come through. We do waive things in those cases, so I don't know if there's something.
Yeah, sure. The COTS equipment out of the FCC doesn't have receiver standards, and we do. And some of their standards are not similar to us. But anyway, in case of FCC, if you don't change anything, the COTS equipment, or you don't retune the frequency, or you don't stick in high-powered antenna, I think it's okay. The NTIA will approve that, as long as it has the grant or equipment certification from FCC. But if you change the characteristics of equipment, or if you modify it, then we have to go review. We're not going to deny it, but it's going to go through a review process.
I think it goes to, the whole thing of kind of spectrum efficiency as well. I'll just say outright, I think in the last 6 months, I refused to sign one cert, and it was a piece, I think, of COTS equipment, and they were using it because it was cheap, and because it's cheap, it's way out, like 30 dB out in some cases. And so, at some point there has to be a threshold or a line, but in a lot of cases we're pretty forgiving and understanding. So. All right, and with that, I'll ask the next question, which is, how else can NTIA assist in the certification process? So, Tom, I guess we should start with you, because there's no point in these two answering.
Really, for us, it's sign them when approved. And I know you've gotten a lot better with that. I know there's some work to be done on the SIPR side of things as we've come out of COVID, and the backlog was mammoth. I get all that, and we're making our way through that. But sometimes, these certifications, a lot of times, we have acquisition milestone decisions that need to be based upon the information that we get back from those. And a lot of times, those get delayed through certifications that haven't been signed that have been approved at SPS. So I know that process is being worked and fine-tuned as much as possible, and I know with you having to do those temporarily, and now Ms. McGrath is getting up to speed on that, so hopefully we see more goodness in that, because that's probably the biggest complaint we would have from the Department of Air Force, is that we just don't get things signed and posted direct net as quickly.
So what kind of delays are you seeing between SPS and signature?
So typically 3-4 months. And this is mostly classified stuff, and I don't want to throw a lot of stones here, but some things that were approved in September and October that just, I think, were signed, but not necessarily uploaded to IRACnet, maybe got put in a desk drawer and lost temporarily. So, and that's caused some angst amongst some of our programs. And I know we beat Ben up constantly on the telephone.
This is what we need to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I think the gentleman that mentioned about the COTS equipment, the provide, that's great. I would have to reach out to my Marines to see if that's happening for us. But I would ask that, we mentioned earlier, reform, looking at the policies and so on and so forth, right? And if that has just been something that you guys have been doing, and if it's been working, that's, something that could be reformed in a policy, right? That we can look at and make it part of the normal business process.
Thank you. So I actually, again, I'm not on the panel, but I have one as well. So when I used to be in the SPS on the high side, there was a Navy certification which was tabled for over 8 months because another federal agency needed to review it, and they kept asking for extensions with no technical table. And so just holding everybody accountable of that time frame of how long they have to actually review.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I always worry about the endless tabling, so thank you.
Are you on?
No. She stole one of my responses was just asking for NTIA to be more of an arbiter for the delays.
We're at about time. Can we do one question for everyone, or?
I think we have them.
Except Stacy. 3.
Okay, I'm going to say this, and I'm not the smartest person in the world. Okay, I went to Spectrum Management School in 2001, and I think from 2001 to now, I'm hearing a lot of the same stuff. I was the one MEF forward G6 Spectrum Manager. I was with Division. I am now Nav Air EQ, and I deal with note to holders, all the fancy acronyms, NTIA, ESG, whatever you want to throw out there. I've always wanted this question here. Why don't we have, whether it's COTS or whatever the case may be, what is so hard about the idea of this? Create a spectrum liaison or coordinator between industry and the DoD. And what I mean by that is this. Tell industry they can develop and try to create anything they want to. Stage 1, 2, 3. And somebody looks at it and says, we either have something similar to this in the DoD already, or this is a great idea, and they can use it in the fleet. And we can try to get it there as quick as possible. And then somebody else begins the coordination process of saying, this is what you're going to need. And that way, you don't have people showing up at Camp Pendleton with stuff that they can't use. You don't have officers saying, I got something that I heard about or saw online. Can we take this over to the theater right now? Because it sounds great. Been there, done that. 11th MEU, 15th MEU, back in the day. It was the same thing. It doesn't matter about the policies that you guys have to follow, the timelines. We need somebody way ahead who can say, can we possibly slow this down and make it happen as quickly as possible because we pre-coordinated everything? That's all I have.
I think for the DoD side, I think we need to still work better with the acquisition side our partners on the acquisition side, because like we mentioned
Exactly.
earlier,
Acquisition is a part of that problem.
It is, they are.
Acquisition is a part
Spectrum
of
is always last, still.
Exactly, because
23
Spectrum's
23 years later after you went through school.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Why are we not telling people in the business, Spectrum is not an afterthought, it's the first thought. It's the same problem that's reoccurring for decades. The one thing about it, decades, it's the same thing. I'm not, am I crazy with the idea of saying, slow industry down? Have a coordinator, make up a title,
Yeah.
and call that person a coordinator.
Yeah, we can take this one offline and, yeah.
You got one more?
Okay. So we'd like to have the appropriate SMEs being able to answer, though.
So can I bring up one last thing?
ahead.
Stacy brought it up, right? And I don't want to sit here and say that, you know, everything is NTIA and so on and so forth, right? We try to bridge the gap with the Navy Marine Corps Spectrum Management Office because, like you said, the acquisition side, that's a big problem as well. We are written as part of the process Spectrum, but we're always forgotten, right? So what we do, we have a Marine placed in our Marine Corps Systems Command department to bridge that gap, to be that belly button between the program managers and, you know, our NMSCs as going through the certification process. But yeah, you're right, it's the same thing for years, and there's work on both sides that have to be done, is what I'm saying.
I'll take the job.
Okay, I think we're timed out. So we are getting timed out. So you can send, if you can use that QR code and send recommendations.
Okay, well, thank you again
Thank you.
for the questions. Get us offline. Happy to talk to you. So, thank you.
Oh, wait, you're doing that one. Sorry, I know you're.
Sorry that we stole some of that. All right. So, A team, I want to thank everyone for the for being ready. Yesterday we planted the seed, and it flourished because there was a lot of questions, a lot of interest into the topic that was discussed. I will have the team over to, for sure, put it after action that as we plan for the next summit, try to ensure that the panel areas we include a little more time, because I do recall a little bit of when we were making this plan, we weren't sure exactly how much time we need to, but this is in one day two instances where additional time for the panels, because to what Mr. Lara mentioned to us, this is the type of stuff and discussion that I will use Mr. good old Gunner Sergeant, Barnett in the back, Garrett, known him for many years. Well, if we use him as a measuring, as a barometer or a thermostat or a thermometer, is that are the topics that we're discussing understandable by him and his Marines? And if the answer is no, how do we try to adjust that? So we'll definitely have it for action to adjust the panels so next go around, because we definitely need to. However, the next topic is Link 16. We have already gone over, so we're going to do our very best, but Link 16 is a topic very close and dear to a lot of folks in this room. So without further ado, floor is yours, Jim.
Good morning. I'll start out by apologizing. I was born and raised in North Carolina, and this is just how I sound. This is how I talk. So please bear with me for a few minutes. We're going to talk about the enhancing connectivity of Link 16. And like I said, before I get started, a little bit about me. 22 years in the Army. I retired almost a year ago. 2012 went to Spectrum Management. 2017, I switched over to electronic warfare warrant officer. So I did that for the last 5 years of my career. And now in the last year, I moved over to NMSC. Started out as the EA GPS coordinator as a contractor. And now in the last 3 months, switched over to Link 16 as the Link 16 lead. So I have 3 months experience with Link 16, so please, after everybody got riled up with the board, please be easy on me with this. Next slide, I think I do myself. The few things we're talking about is brief history, the TFA portal, LPDS, and the quitter process, which is brand new, hot off the presses in the last 3 weeks, I believe. The FAA has established their document with that, and we will briefly cover all of those. So a little bit about the history of Link 16. We'll make this as brief as possible. Starting in the late 70s, early 80s, about as long as I've been alive. And it works within the radio navigation system, which we are a guest of. It belongs to the FAA, and we use it as a guest in their house. And they have the right to protect their equipment just like we have the need to use it. So there's a hit and miss between the two. We're trying to come together, and as long as we can do everything within the limits of what they can accept, then generally we are okay as far as using and producing Link 16 activities. So with the portal, this is the current system we use now. There's two. We have the TFA portal and LPDS. And that's our current systems now. The biggest issue we have between the two is sometimes the information doesn't match. So if it gets put into the TFA portal, we need it to match what is actually being put into LPDS. When we see a discrepancy there, that is something on the users that interfaced it to put it in, and we have to identify the problems, we have to get it corrected, and make sure it matches when we go into Link 16, into LPDS, I'm sorry. So we're running 960 to 1215 megahertz. It is, let's say, runs all FAA's air traffic runs through that band, and that's what we need to make sure that we are not interfering with when we are conducting these activities. And since the exception in the 70s and 80s, there hasn't been any known interference that we can contribute directly to Link 16. So it seems to be working as planned, and we are continuing to adapt and develop as we move forward with new software versions and new abilities to use it. So the e-portal is where all the TFA information is inputted, and then we move over to LPDS, where the event scheduling takes place. So it's similar to a legacy server. So you input, you go by the JO or the SPL, the area where you're working, times and dates that you're going to use the equipment, and then we deconflict from there. So for 100 nautical miles, your authorized TSDF limits of 100% and 40% at 200 nautical miles. With that, users have the ability to override going over 100%, and we have no way to deconflict that except for at the user level. It is on the user DoD, not NMSC, to do that deconfliction. So the priority list typically goes with major exercises and events down to testing and training, because testing and training can typically be adjusted around major events, but not the other way around. And then, like I said, the last 3 weeks, we get into the quitter process, the quick turn test request. The DoD and the FAA established this process to expedite authorizations for developmental testing of Link 16. The FAA set forth in their memo, this is a 5-day or less process timeline, and that is from when NMSC submits it to FAA. That does not mean I have a test in 5 days, I'm gonna shoot a quitter up right now, because we do not have time to vet it, look at it, and do our deconfliction prior to it being submitted to FAA. With that, with the FAA's guidance in their memo, they have to squat hold on everything that they were processing before this quitter and try to get it knocked out as quick as possible. So if we were to submit something for, let's say, 1 March right now, it would take precedence over the other events in the system, because they have a requirement from their heads, from their memo, that they have to follow and get this submitted as quick as possible and turn back to us with a acceptance concurrence as quick as possible. So that puts the onus on NMSC to where if we have other events that are queued for us that are already in the pipeline, we can't throw a quitter that starts out in 30 days. We can't throw that up right now, because it will stop everything else that's going to happen before that, just so they can get it processed. It's not fair for the people that have already planned their events. It's not fair for FAA to have to stop and do what they're doing to get it ascertained, and it's not right for the users. So it is on the onus of NMSC to work within our DoD priority list to see where we can fit this in to make sure that it happens in a timely manner, but doesn't step on events and exercises that are still in the queue that need to be processed. So that's the issue we're working out between ourselves, the FAA, we keep constant communication, and as long as we can stay on the same page, I think we're doing all right. But then we get to the actual pieces of the quitter, like not just the inception, but the eligibility. So it's for developmental testing only. It is not for exercises. It is not for big operations. It's not for 1,000 platforms that we want to do. Is developmental test only, mostly for equipment that has not reached the EMCF certification level that it needs to be in, and it needs to be developed more. And the FAA understands this, DOD understands this, the equipment manufacturers understand this, because in order to get to a position where it can be stage 3, stage 4, it has to be tested. And then that is where the quitter process can aid in development of the test, but it does come with its own unique set of challenges. For GPS deconfliction, we can't do a quitter at the same time that we are hosting a GPS event at 25K. I think James mentioned this on Monday. So that is our threshold to make sure that there's no overlapping events for a quitter at 25K. And these GPS events have to be scheduled. I think Stratcom can push it to 37 days, but they typically require 60-day submission. So the next 30 days is all a quitter will be approved for, because that's what we can guarantee we deconflict the GPS events against, and that's why the quitter is 30 days. It can be renewed for 30 more, but again, it requires that established 30-day timeline, so that way the GPS events are deconflicted with known events that are happening already. With that, it's not a quick process. Like I said, they submitted their GPS events way in advance, and there's a list of them by time, location, and we have to go in, map them all out to make sure what's going to conflict, what's going to be in that area where this quitter was going to take place. And then, do what? Oh, I thought I heard something. And then, after NMSC does that, FAA has to go back and do their analysis too to make sure that they don't come up with any new events that we didn't see or something we didn't catch, and we have to make sure that we're both on the same page with what we're tracking out there in the system that's already been identified. Some more of the requirements of LPDS entries. Not all of them for a 30-day period have to be entered. We're going to give you the deconfliction times that you can transmit against and the ones you can't that we will non-concur with, and that all has to do with the GPS deconfliction. And then you can do your LPDS entries around that. But we have to have something to start with. So if you want to start on the 1st of March, then there has to be at least an event that we can use to make sure that your entries match what you're requesting on your quitter. Because if they don't match, then we already have a problem and we haven't even got to the event yet. And then with the future LPDS entries that fall within the approval window, they must be submitted within 24 hours prior to start X of the exercise. And that's again so it can be validated and make sure you're not pushing TSDF limits, and then the other exercises can still take place. These locations that you see in red here, these are in the actual FAA memo for the locations that are available for quitter testing. So instead of just listing them out for you, I wanted to show them to you on a map, but they won't break it down. So the Nevada Test and Training Range, Edwards Air Force Base, the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Vet Capes, Pacific Coast, Yuma Proving Grounds, Luke Air Force Base, the Joint Pacific Alaska Range Complex, and Pax River are the 9 locations that are located in the actual TFA or the FAA memo for approval locations for a quitter. Anything outside of this is not a quitter. It will not be approved, it will not be processed, because it's outside of the known locations for FAA quitters. And then issues and concerns. I'm going to share some of mine in my 90 days of Link 16 experience. Submission timelines, like the CJCSI 6232 spells out that submissions to NMSC will be 60 days, and that gives us 30 days to get it to the FAA. This is starting to get better, but prior to this, it rarely happened. The 60 days, I can pass on some as long as I could get it to FAA within 30. But the amount of TFA requests that we send to the FAA, I do not feel it does them justice if we cannot follow the CJCSI and get it to them with a 30-day window in order to get it approved. Like, it doesn't do them justice, and it doesn't, I mean, 22 years in the Army, regulations are everything. Like, if you cannot stick to a regulation that's in black and white, then I have an issue with that. Another issue, requesters knowingly exceeding TSD limits without deconfliction. That is a huge problem because of the override button. They can override it, and then one example right here, this is one event I pulled right after I made these slides. So one event is a 3-day event, and everything that you see that says TFA and there's orange beside it, I removed names from this so that way I'm not busting nobody out, and I removed the location. But this is everything that was overridden for this one area and this one event. This is 3 different users. That's why it says user 1 and 2 and 3 all overrid the TSDF limits knowingly because you have to accept that. For this one, I think it's a 3-day period for this one exercise, and that busted out for everybody else. TSDF limits are not under 100% for 100 nautical miles, then every event that's in there will be questioned and likely to not get approved. Like I said, this is just one example, and it was an accident that I found this one. I wasn't looking for it at the time. I was actually processing the TFA, and I was like, holy crap. So those are my issues. Those are my concerns. The quitter process is a good way ahead. I think it will be a little heartache on everybody's side at the beginning while we try to figure it out. But we will move forward. We will make it better. I've had Eric Palacios is here now. We've had multiple conversations about this, where it's headed. We think it's going to a good direction. And then with James in the back, I think that we can make it better. It's make League 16 great again. Like that's, I'm gonna put it as a footer on my emails, so y'all see that. But that is all I had for Link 16. So the quitters and this face are the 2 newest things to Link 16 that y'all will see. So soak this in, and then the quitter process. So we will get better and get there. Is there any questions that I cannot answer for you? And then I believe there will be another online presentation following mine to fit in this time slot.
I do have one question, sir.
Yes, sir.
I won't grab the microphone.
Oh, you're fine. I can hear you.
It's about the quitter. My question is, the quitter, that's specific to if let's say your equipment is a stage 4, stage 3, right?
Developmental testing, yes, sir.
And let's say the software doesn't yet have EMCF compatibility certification from the FAA. That's what that is for.
Yes, sir.
So outside of those specific ranges, we cannot use it.
No, TFA.
What you're saying is, whenever we get requests on a daily basis, I'm the only Link 16 guy in the MEF along with one JICO, okay? So when we get these requests, which are basically every single day, we need to start pointing them to these quitter-approved JOAs.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Because those JOAs on the quitter, I could shoot it to you. I don't know if I can't change the slides now. So the areas I mentioned, it does break it down by SAA, so it is more specific. It breaks each location down into the 9 or 10 or whatever to send to, and we'll make sure you get that. But for the quitter process, it has to be in those locations that are mentioned in the FAA document. So like I said, there's some more things we're trying to flesh out with previously submitted quitters and TFAs and how to expedite those. But this is 3 weeks young. It's a little good smelling newborn baby. What else do we have? Do you know who's? I think I hear him. Yeah, I hear him. Like
Hi again, this is Chien, sitting in for Igrum again, for the Link 16 part. Next slide, please. So, first of all, thanks Working Group 1, FAA, and NTA for working with us throughout the year to improve the process for Link 16 SPS. We had gone through a lot of iteration and discussion in terms of streamlining and improving SPS certification process for Link 16. So starting with the EMC's process, so essentially the program office, mid-program office, work directly with the vendor to do the ATP and software component tests and so forth. And then they provide the data to NAVWAR 5.0 for review and assessment before the data are sent to Working Group 1, FAA included, for their review and approval. Once that approved, the mid-program office provided the data to program office, and which in turn the program office submit the request for SPS certification via BPM to NMSC for processing. So I highlight there for stage 3, EMCF is not required for stage 3 SPS certification. EMCF is required for stage 4. Next please. So this is just a flow chart on for stage 3. As you can stated earlier, so the mid-program office work directly with the vendor industry to perform testing, box level testing, ATP, SCT, and the data is then provided to NAVWAR for analysis and assessment. And then right after that, the mid-program office send a request to the program office, SysCom, for SPS certification. So then program office submit the request to NMSC, and NMSC review the data as well as any supporting document, and then we submit it to NTIA, which then go to Working Group 1 for review and for meeting. So it's as you can see on the flow chart there. So the process is very similar to stage 4, which is the next stage. Next slide, sorry. Next slide, please. So stage 4, as mentioned earlier, so stage 4 require additional step, which is the EMCF certification. So they will review the data and certify the EMC, and once that is completed and to DoD standard, and then that EMC data is then sent to Working Group 1, and FAA and NTA get to review it. Once it's approved, then stage 4 can be requested via program office, and then NMSC review and ensure that everything's is compliant, technical data for the ESC request met NTA standard, and we submit it to NTIA. Then I go to Working Group 1, and we review it and discuss it. And once all the members concur, it gets approved and gets certified by NTIA. So NTIA sign it, and then for stage 4, user can actually do the permanent assignment, so which cut down the yearly or monthly TFA. So with the permanent assignment, user can have up to 5 years. So stage 4 is a big deal. So to cut down a lot of work for DoD. So that's basically it. Pretty straightforward. Pending any question, I think that's the last slide.
So I know Jose is going to try to keep us on schedule, but I just want to say, Link 16 is very important for the DoD. This thing's being briefed at Congress. That's how how much it's been elevated, which isn't a good thing, but that's where it's at. Any questions anybody may have, please come find myself or Jimmy, and we'll answer any questions you may have. And we do send out a monthly Link 16 advisory, so there's info in there that covers the quitter process. So if you didn't receive it, let me know, and we'll get you on that monthly distro.
Hey, James, thank you for the entire team on that Lean 16. I know it's a hot topic. For sure, I will encourage those of you that are in the process to not leave this room until you make facial contact, get some business cards, shake hands, and maybe even have a cup of coffee with them to make sure that when the phone rings, you know who each other is. That will go a long way, since we know this is a people business. But now we're going to go into a break, so thank you, everybody, for getting us close, back on track. We're going to go on break now between 1400 14:30. Afterwards, we are going to be going into a presentation from our NMC so Far East. Mr. Boggs is going to be talking to us for all things that he's doing on beautiful Japan, so he doesn't get any more operational than talking directly from Japan. So thank you much.
So if you could kind of make a hole, they'll be bringing that robot back in here. So if you can steer away from the door, we would greatly appreciate it.